The screen of my wife's phone glowed on the kitchen counter, a beacon of betrayal in the quiet of our home. A text from Marcus lit up the silence. Is he gone yet? Can't wait to see you in our new apartment. My heart didn't just skip a beat, it felt like it shriveled in my chest. My eyes, against my will, darted to the staircase where a half-packed suitcase sat, a silent confession. She walked in then, her smile fading as she saw her phone in my trembling hand. It's over, Mark, she said, her voice as cold as the marble countertop. No remorse, no sadness. Just a statement of fact. I've been planning this for months. I'm taking everything. The house, the cars, the business. Everything you're worth. She smiled then, a cruel, confident twist of her lips, and slid a stack of papers toward me. Divorce papers. I felt the world drop out from under me, the familiar kitchen morphing into a stranger's house. The woman I had loved, the woman I had built a life with, had become a predator in an instant. The lawyer's office was as cold and impersonal as a morgue. Chloe sat beside her lawyer, Mr. Dalton, a man with a sharp suit and an even sharper gaze that never seemed to blink. My own lawyer, Mr. Evans, a kind man in his 60s, looked deeply uncomfortable. Our client is entitled to the marital home, both vehicles, and 50% of the business's current valuation, Mr. Dalton stated, his voice flat and final. Plus, substantial spousal support for her contributions as a homemaker. Homemaker? The word echoed in my head. She had chosen to stop working years ago, a decision I'd supported, believing it would make her happy. Now, that very choice was being wielded as a weapon to bludgeon me financially. I looked at Chloe, searching for a flicker of the woman I knew. She stared back, her eyes hard, polished stones. She was enjoying this spectacle, my pain. I felt a wave of nausea. Mr. Evans leaned over, his whisper shaky. Their case is extremely aggressive, Mark. We need to be very, very careful. I nodded, the weight of their demands pressing me down into my chair. It looked like she was going to win, and she knew it. My new apartment was a small, barren box on the wrong side of town. The silence was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. I sat on the bare floor, my back against the wall, and let the weight of the last 48 hours crush me. The betrayal, the naked greed in her eyes, the loss of the future I thought we had, it all crashed down at once. I put my head in my hands and sobbed, great heaving sobs that tore from my throat. I felt utterly broken, a hollowed-out shell of the man I used to be. Then, through the fog of despair, a memory flickered. A casual comment from Chloe's friend, Maya, at a barbecue almost a year ago. She'd pulled me aside, her brow furrowed. Mark, is everything okay? Chloe's suddenly very interested in your finances, huh? Asking me all sorts of weird questions. It had seemed odd then, but I'd brushed it off. Now, it felt like a clue, a single star in a pitch-black sky. With trembling hands, I grabbed my laptop. I opened a hidden, encrypted folder I hadn't touched in months. My heart hammered against my ribs as I typed the password. A single file appeared. Its title made the air leave my lungs in a rush, Asset Dispersal Strategy, Phase 1. The journal entries told a story I had been blind to. It all started just over a year ago. Chloe, who had never shown more than a passing interest in my tech startup, began asking pointed questions about profit margins, investor payouts, and company valuation. She became secretive, spending hours on her phone, always angling the screen away from me. My nature has always been meticulous, orderly. A quiet voice in my head told me to start documenting everything. I created a secret digital journal, password protected and hidden behind layers of innocuous files. I began slowly, carefully transferring the bulk of our liquid savings into a complex business trust that my father, a retired accountant, controlled. I worked with my CFO to create a false paper trail, making it appear my company was in a valley, its value artificially low. And, with a sinking heart, I hired a discreet private investigator. I didn't know it would lead to this devastating end, but some deep-seated instinct told me to build a fortress. Now, in this empty apartment, surrounded by the echoes of my old life, these careful, paranoid notes were my only shield and my only weapon. The buzzing of my phone was an intrusion into my misery. It was a picture from Chloe. She was at La Perla, the most expensive restaurant in the city, laughing, a glass of champagne held aloft. Marcus was beside her, his arm draped over her shoulder. Before I could process the sting, another picture arrived, a breathtaking view from a hotel balcony overlooking crystal-clear ocean water. "The life I deserve," her text read. A moment later, another followed, "Getting used to it without you." Each message was a deliberate, precise cut. She was flaunting her victory, parading her newfound freedom and wealth, trying to shatter what was left of my spirit. I felt the anger then, hot and corrosive, rising from the pit of my stomach. But instead of consuming me, it began to harden, to cool into something solid and determined. I looked at the pictures not with a heartbroken man's eyes, but with the focus of a strategist. She was proudly showing me her hand. Arrogance. And in my experience, arrogance was the precursor to a fatal mistake. A soft, almost hesitant knock came at my apartment door late one evening. I wasn't expecting anyone. Cautiously, I opened it to find Maya, Chloe's best friend, standing there. She looked pale and nervous, wringing her hands. "Mark, I'm so sorry to just show up," she whispered, her voice tight with anxiety. "I can't stay quiet any longer. It's eating me up inside. Chloe, she's been bragging to me. She has this whole plan to drain you completely. She's hidden money." My heart thumped a hard, single beat against my ribs. "What money, Maya?" I asked, pulling her inside. She glanced over her shoulder as if expecting Chloe to be there. "An offshore account. In the Caymans. She thinks no one knows." She opened it under her mother's maiden name, Peterson. She fumbled in her purse and handed me a folded cocktail napkin with a bank's name and a string of numbers scribbled on it. "She doesn't deserve any of this, Mark. What she's doing is evil." Before I could even form a proper thank you, she turned and hurried back down the hall, disappearing into the stairwell. I stood there, clutching the napkin. It was a small piece of paper, but it felt like the master key to her entire scheme. Back in Mr. Dalton's oppressive office, the mood had shifted imperceptibly. Mr. Evans, who had previously seemed so worried, now possessed a new, unnerving calmness. "My client is eager to put this painful chapter behind him," he announced to a surprised Mr. Dalton. "We are willing to agree to the terms regarding the house, the cars, and the alimony. We see no benefit in a protracted legal battle." I sat perfectly still beside him, my gaze fixed on my hands folded in my lap. I didn't look at Chloe. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Mr. Dalton's smirk. I could feel Chloe's triumphant gaze burning into me. They thought I had broken. They thought I was surrendering. They believed they had checkmated me after only a few moves. They signed the preliminary agreement with smug, self-satisfied smiles, already counting their money. What they didn't understand, what they couldn't see, was that we were deliberately letting them win this skirmish. We needed them to believe their victory was absolute, to sign the documents that would seal their fate, before we unleashed the real war. The final day in court was a quiet, almost anticlimactic affair. The judge, a weary-looking woman, finalized the divorce with a few taps of her gavel. Just like that, it was done. Chloe was awarded everything she had demanded. The deed to our house, the titles to both cars, a staggering monthly alimony payment, and a massive, lump-sum cash settlement. She didn't even glance in my direction, as if I were already a ghost from a past life. The moment we were dismissed, she was on her phone, posting a picture of herself outside the courthouse, a wide, victorious smile on her face. The caption read, "Finally free. New life, here I come." I signed the final stack of papers with a calm, steady hand, my expression a carefully constructed mask of defeat. But beneath the surface, a current of anticipation was building. As I walked out of the courthouse into the bland afternoon light, my phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a text from an unknown number. My breath hitched. I opened it. The message was brief and beautiful. The assets have been acquired. Awaiting your instructions. The game was on. The unknown number belonged to a man named Arthur, my discreet contact at a high-end, private auction house. I had hired him weeks ago to act as my proxy, my anonymous buyer on the open market. He was expensive, utterly professional, and asked no questions. He sent me a secure link. The first item from my old home was already up for sale. It was my grandfather's vintage Patek Philippe wristwatch, the one he'd given me on my wedding day, a symbol of enduring time. She was selling my family heirloom, a piece of my history, for quick, easy cash. The deliberate insult sent a fresh wave of pain through me, but it was quickly quelled by a surge of resolve. I texted Arthur back, "Buy it. Do not exceed the reserve price. I want no suspicion." An hour later, my phone chimed. Asset secured. Purchase price, $4,200. The watch was mine again. It was the first piece of my shattered life I had taken back. It felt like a small, significant victory, a proof of concept. But it was only the very beginning of a long, calculated campaign. Chloe, flush with her perceived victory, threw a massive, extravagant party at her house. I saw the evidence all over social media, loud music, crowded rooms filled with people I didn't recognize, bottles of expensive champagne flowing like water. She was celebrating her new life in my old home, stomping through the memories we had built without a second thought. The very next morning, as her hangover likely pounded behind her eyes, my proxy, Arthur, made his move. He sent a formal, perfectly legal letter on the official letterhead of Apex Property Management. It was delivered by a stern-faced process server. The letter stated that the new owner of the property had terminated her month-to-month lease. She had 30 days to vacate the premises. I would have given a year's salary to see her face in that moment, to watch the confusion and dawning horror as her foundation cracked. The house was never truly hers. I had bought it back at a private, off-market sale through a shell corporation she could never trace back to me. Her castle was built on sand. The brand new, cherry red luxury convertible had been her ultimate prize, a symbol of her liberated status. She had posted countless pictures with it, her hair whipping in the wind, a pair of oversized sunglasses hiding her eyes. One Tuesday afternoon, she came out of an upscale coffee shop, balancing her latte, and slid into the driver's seat. She pushed the ignition button. Nothing happened. The car's sleek digital dashboard lit up with a cold, impersonal message: vehicle disabled due to non-payment. Contact financial services. She was baffled, then furious. She called the dealership, screaming at some poor customer service rep, but they couldn't help her. The loan for the vehicle was still in the name of my business, a detail her lawyer had overlooked in his rush to claim assets. I had officially called in the loan. Later that afternoon, a flatbed tow truck arrived. Neighbors watched from their windows as Chloe stood on the driveway, her face a mask of humiliation and rage, screaming uselessly as they hooked her beautiful car up and drove it away. Her prized possession was gone. She was starting to understand, viscerally, that nothing she had taken was truly free. Real, gut-wrenching panic began to set in for Chloe. The flow of easy money had stopped. She went to her favorite designer boutique to buy a new wardrobe, a celebration of her new life. Her gold card was declined. She tried another. Declined. A third. Declined. Her face burning with embarrassment, she rushed to the bank to access her massive cash settlement. The bank manager, a stern man in a suit, took her into a private office. He informed her that all her accounts were frozen indefinitely. My lawyer, Mr. Evans, had formally tipped off the federal authorities about her hidden offshore account in the Caymans, the one Maya had told me about. They were launching a full investigation into possible fraud, perjury, and tax evasion. The millions she thought were hers, sitting snugly in that secret account, were now completely locked away, visible but utterly untouchable. She was financially stranded, trapped in a gilded cage of her own making. The music had stopped, and she was without a chair. Desperate for money to pay her mounting legal fees and simply live, Chloe began a fire sale of everything that remained in the house. Arthur and his team were always watching, their digital bots scanning every auction site and luxury goods forum. She listed our complete set of wedding china, a delicate bone china pattern her own grandmother had gifted us. Arthur bought it. She sold the collection of expensive jewelry I had painstakingly curated for her over a decade of birthdays and anniversaries. He bought it all. She even sold the furniture, the original art we'd collected on our travels, the expensive Persian rug her mother had given us as a housewarming gift. My proxy systematically outbid or outright purchased every single item she put up for sale. Each notification on my phone, asset secured, was a quiet, personal victory. I was reclaiming my past, piece by piece, without her ever knowing the hand that guided the market. She was desperately selling off the shell of her own life, and I, her anonymous benefactor, was the only one buying. Then, the bombshell dropped. A headline on the front page of the Business Times screamed, "Struggling tech startup, Nexus Core, lands massive global contract." The tech world was buzzing. My company, which had been presented in court as a failing, barely profitable entity, had just signed an exclusive, multi-year partnership with a global tech giant. The contract was worth tens of millions upfront, with hundreds of millions in projected revenue. The article quoted me extensively, explaining how we had been in quiet, secret negotiations for over 9 months, deliberately keeping our breakthrough success and skyrocketing valuation hidden from the market to secure the deal without competition. The true, staggering value of the company was now public, undeniable knowledge. I was not the broke, defeated man Chloe had left in the dust. I was wealthier, more powerful, and more successful than I had ever been while married to her. Her entire legal victory, the settlement she had fought for, was built on a foundation of lies and evaluation I had engineered. My success, my truth, was now out in the open for the world to see. I received a final, encrypted email from the private investigator, a man named Leo. Attached were several audio files. With a deep breath, I clicked play. Chloe's voice filled my office, clear as day, dripping with condescending confidence. She was talking to Marcus. "Once the divorce is final and I get the money, we can be together properly," she said. "I just have to play the heartbroken victim a little longer. He's so clueless." Then, Marcus's voice, smooth and agreeable, replied, "And the husband has no idea about our plans?" Leo's email included a final note, "My work is complete. All objectives met. As per our agreement, the actor playing Marcus has been paid in full and has left the country. He will not be returning. I had hired him. There was no real affair partner, no great love. It was all an elaborate, expensive show, a play designed to get me concrete, admissible evidence of her gold-digging intentions and her plan to defraud me. She, in her arrogance and greed, had fallen for the perfect performance. Chloe's carefully curated social media world imploded. Her feed transformed overnight from boastful glamour shots to a desperate, tear-streaked video. She sat in what looked like a cheap hotel room, her face puffy and devoid of makeup. "My ex-husband is systematically ruining me," she cried into the camera, her voice cracking with what sounded like genuine despair. "He's taken my home, my car, my money. He's a monster who is punishing me for leaving." But the court of public opinion had already read the news. The comments below her video were not sympathetic. They were a torrent of fury and scorn. "Gold digger got what she deserved," one read. "You tried to take a man for everything and you failed. Karma is a queen," wrote another. The public sympathy she so desperately craved had evaporated, replaced by a wave of schadenfreude and outrage. She had played her hand with arrogance and lost spectacularly. Late that night, the buzzer from my apartment intercom sounded, long and violent. A frantic, screaming voice, distorted by the cheap speaker, echoed through the quiet lobby. It was her. She was downstairs, unhinged and demanding to be let up. After a moment's hesitation, I pressed the button to unlock the main door. I heard the elevator ding, and then the furious pounding on my own door. I opened it. She stormed past me into my spacious, beautifully furnished apartment, her face a twisted mask of pure, undiluted rage. You ruined everything. She screamed, her voice shrill. I closed the door and leaned against it, crossing my arms. I felt a strange, profound calm. No, Chloe, I said, my voice even and low, a stark contrast to her hysteria. You did this to yourself. I then began to lay it all out for her, like a professor delivering a final lecture. I told her about the digital journal, the asset transfers to my father's trust, the engineered devaluation of my company, the private investigator, the actor playing Marcus, and my knowledge of the offshore account. I showed her, step by logical step, how her own blinding greed and arrogance had made her miss all the signs. She stared at me, her anger melting into stunned confusion, and then into wide-eyed horror as the full, devastating scope of my plan became clear. You set a trap for me, she whispered, her voice trembling. I built a fortress to protect myself from the predator I saw you becoming, I corrected her coldly. You were just too hungry to notice the walls until you were already inside. The truth, in all its brutal, unchangeable glory, finally dawned on her. The legal consequences descended upon her with the swift, impersonal force of a guillotine. Armed with the overwhelming evidence I provided, the detailed financial records, Leo's PI reports, the incriminating audio recordings, my legal team filed a motion to overturn the original divorce settlement on the grounds of fraud and perjury. Chloe had lied under oath about the company's value and had deliberately hidden marital assets. The court agreed. The settlement was vacated. She was now facing serious criminal charges for perjury, a felony. On top of that, the federal tax authorities, armed with the information about the Cayman account, launched their own prosecution for tax evasion and wire fraud. She was looking at millions in restitution and fines, and a very real possibility of prison time. Her lawyer, Mr. Dalton, citing a breakdown of the attorney-CLI and relationship, formally withdrew from her case. The very legal system she had tried to weaponize against me had now turned on her with terrifying finality. The final, most spiteful item appeared on the auction block. It was my wedding ring. A simple, thick band of white gold. She was selling it for a pitifully low amount, a final, petty attempt to wound me, to claim some last shred of symbolic victory. I felt nothing but a distant pity. I sent a one-word instruction to Arthur, buy it. He did. A few days later, a small, unassuming box arrived by courier. I opened it on my desk. The ring lay on a bed of cotton, gleaming dully under the office lights. I didn't keep it. I took it to a master jeweler downtown. I paid him to let me watch. I stood and observed as he placed the band into a special furnace. I watched as it softened, glowed, and finally pooled into a shimmering liquid, the physical symbol of our broken promises dissolving into formless metal. He then skillfully poured and worked the gold, reforming it into a simple, elegant, and modern bracelet. It was no longer a wedding ring. It was something new, beautiful, and unburdened, something that belonged only to me and my future. My new high-rise apartment was no longer an empty, temporary space. It was a home, my home. It was filled with the familiar furniture, the art, the rugs, and the small, personal items I had systematically bought back. Every piece held a memory, but now those memories were reframed. They were no longer anchors to a painful past, but trophies of a hard-won victory. I felt a deep, solid peace I hadn't known in years, a quiet contentment that seeped into my bones. I invited Maya over for coffee to properly thank her. I can never repay you for what you did, I told her sincerely, handing her a beautifully wrapped box. You gave me the key when I was locked out. She opened it to reveal the bracelet, the one forged from the melted wedding ring. A symbol of a new beginning, I said. She smiled, a real, warm, genuine smile, and fastened it around her wrist. It was a thank you for her courage and kindness when my world had been devoid of both. It felt perfectly, poetically right. Months later, I heard news of Chloe through an old, mutual acquaintance who had taken pity on her. She was living in a small, dingy, rented room in a rundown part of the city, a far cry from the luxury she had demanded. With her assets frozen and her reputation in tatters, she had been forced to take a job as a cashier at a 24-hour grocery store, her only source of income to pay for her basic needs and her massive legal bills. The acquaintance showed me a grainy picture taken from across the street. She looked decades older, her shoulders slumped, her face etched with lines of stress and defeat. The glamour, the carefully constructed beauty, was completely gone, stripped away by the harsh realities of consequence. The life of luxury she had schemed and lied for was now a distant, mocking memory. She was living, day in and day out, with the inescapable results of her own choices. I felt no sympathy, only a quiet, solemn acknowledgement that the scales of justice had, finally, been balanced. I took my dad out for an extravagant dinner at the city's best steakhouse, a place he'd always talked about but never visited. He was the quiet, unsung hero of my story, the man who had held the complex business trust for me, never questioning my urgency, simply trusting his son. Over rich chocolate lava cake, he looked at me, his eyes, so like my own, filled with a profound pride. "Son," he said, his voice a little rough with emotion, "I'm not proud of the millions you made from that contract. Anyone can get lucky. I'm proud of the man you became through all this. You were smart, you were strategic, you were unbelievably strong, and you never, ever lost your integrity. You fought back with truth and planning, not with more lies and chaos." His words settled deep in my soul, meaning more to me than any business deal ever could. I had my father's respect. And that, I knew with absolute certainty, was worth more than all the money in the world. Using the vast wealth from my company's success, I founded a nonprofit organization. I called it the Fresh Start Foundation. Its mission was clear and personal, to provide financial legal aid, emotional support, and strategic counsel for people, especially men, who found themselves facing financially devastating and unfair divorces. I wanted to be the shield for others that I had wished for myself. We held a large press conference to announce its launch. I stood at the podium and shared a sanitized version of my story, explaining the pain of feeling powerless against a rigged system. The media response was immense and overwhelmingly positive. Donations poured in. I was taking the poison of my own experience and transforming it into an antidote for others. It gave the entire painful struggle a new, profound, and positive meaning, a legacy that was far greater than myself. Almost a year to the day later, at the first annual Black Tie Gala for my foundation, our paths crossed one last time. The room was filled with the city's elite, glittering under crystal chandeliers. And there she was. Chloe, looking gaunt and brittle, was on the arm of a much older, notoriously married shipping magnate. She was wearing a dress that was a season out of date, trying desperately to project an aura of belonging she no longer possessed. Our eyes met across the crowded, buzzing room. Her face, for a fleeting second, was a canvas of pure, undiluted hatred, quickly masked by a deep, aching envy. I held her gaze for a moment, long enough for her to see the absolute peace and success in mine. Then, I gave her a small, polite, and utterly dismissive nod. It was not a greeting, it was a termination. I turned my back to her and smoothly resumed my conversation with the mayor, who was laughing at a joke I'd made. The power dynamic was not just reversed, it was permanently cemented. I had not just won, I had truly, completely, and gracefully moved on. That night, long after the gala had ended, I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window in my penthouse apartment, a glass of water in my hand, looking down at the city lights twinkling like a field of diamonds. I thought about the long, twisting, painful journey that had led me here. She was so wrong. She thought she could take everything from me. But a person's true worth isn't in their bank account or their property. You can't take what a person is at their very core. You can't take their dignity, their intelligence, their resilience, or their will to fight back when they are cornered. She took the physical objects, the hollow shell of the life we had built together. So I let her have that empty shell. I let her believe it was a prize. And then, with patience and precision, I bought it all back, piece by piece, while I was simultaneously building a new life from the ground up. A better one. A stronger one. A life made not of shared dreams, but of personal strength, hard-won truth, and unshakable self-reliance. And that life, that person I had become through the fire? That is something no one can ever take from me.